Welcome to Spooky Halls. Tonight's story, I Am Ready to Die, by Reddit user DoomDragon682. Life isn't fair. That's a lesson I've recently learned. I've lived a decent life. I'm not a saint, but I'm not evil either. I am polite to everyone I meet and give donations when I have the money to do so. Of course, I have my faults. I curse at strangers when they cut me off in traffic, and I hang up on spam callers. Once or twice, I've even shut the door on a door-to-door salesman. But I don't know if I've ever done anything to deserve this. I was at my office working when I realized I was thirsty. I tried to get up and go to the water cooler, and instead fell face first to the floor. Several of my coworkers rushed to my side to make sure I was okay. I wasn't. I'll never forget the look in the doctor's eyes when he gave me my diagnosis. ALS. There was silence in the room for a moment before I found my voice again. I asked him all the normal questions he's probably heard before. Was there anything that could be done? How did it happen? How long did I have? He told me what it could. None of it was good. There was no cure, but treatment could make it more bearable. It might be genetic, or it could be random. Most people lasted between 2 to 5 years, and at the speed it seemed to be progressing, I likely had the former. He left the room then, to give me some time to myself. I don't know when the tears started, but I couldn't stop them after they did. This wasn't fair. I was barely 30. I had never married. My last girlfriend broke up with me a year ago. I didn't have any family. I didn't deserve this. I remember feeling hate and anger then. Hate at the universe for letting this happen, and anger for the unfairness of it all. Eventually I calmed down and I spoke with the doctor. He said that it seemed to be progressing fairly fast. The most that could be done was I could be assigned a care provider and try to live out my days peacefully. I accepted his suggestion, and soon I wasn't alone in my home. My nurse's name was Josh. He was the closest thing to a friend I had. He was young and full of life. He always made small talk and joke around, and sometimes I'd forget about the hand I'd been dealt in life. A few of my coworkers visited to give their condolences. I forced a smile and thanked them, but inside I was still bitter. I hate to say it, but that's what I felt most in those days, bitterness. I heard about the ice bucket challenge. Instead of inspiring me, it made me angry. You dunk a bucket of water on your head to feel what it's like to have this god-awful affliction for half a second, while I had to deal with this monster slowly crawling up my body every day. I tried to push those feelings away. It wasn't anyone's fault this happened to me, and I didn't want to be remembered as a bitter, angry old man. But it's hard. Maybe that's what drew it to me. I remember the night so vividly, even now. Josh had just helped me into bed after a marathon of Back to the Future. He was a fan of sci-fi like me, and I laid on the bed with the room illuminated by moonlight from the window. By now, both my legs were practically vestigial. I couldn't so much as twitch my toe, and my arms were soon to follow. I could feel them grow heavier each day. As I lay there, I felt the dark thoughts creep into my head. Once again, I dwelled on how unfair this was. Why me? Why was I cursed with this monster that slowly devoured my body and left me as a husk of who I once was? That's when I heard a voice from the foot of my bed. The voice sounded weathered and tired, like someone who had seen everything and was bored by it. You're right. It is unfair. I bolted up, or tried to. and I managed to lift my head and prop myself up to see the intruder. He was standing next to my window, shrouded by darkness. I couldn't make out his face, but I saw that he was tall, his head nearly touching the ceiling, and he was bone thin. I saw his hand nearly reach his knees, each ending in long, thin fingers. I could hardly make out his clothes. He seemed to be wearing some kind of robe. He looked like a shadow had peeled itself from a wall. I reached for my emergency button when he spoke again. "Do not do that. He will not hear." Something about the way he said it made me pause. He spoke it with such certainty and conviction that I was totally sure he was telling the truth. My hand fell away from the button. I turned to him and demanded to know what he wanted, why he was here. He was silent for a moment before he spoke again. "I have come to make you an offer, to cure you of your affliction, if you choose." I froze at that. For a moment, I was too stunned to say anything, and that angry, it just boiled in me. What kind of sadistic asshole breaks into a dying man's home just to insult him by trying to give him false hope? Before I could open my mouth to express my anger, the figure stepped into the light of the moon, and I felt the words die in my throat. His face was pale, and he had a thick beard that was jet black. It was his eyes that stopped me. They were such deep voids of black that seemed to go on infinitely. I sat, unable to conjure a single thought or a sentence. I swallowed, and I asked him who he was, what he wanted. He spoke. "I have come to show you the world beyond, and after I've done so, I shall give you a choice." I stared, open mouthed, at the being that stood at the foot of my bed. Some ancient primal fear grasped me as I sat unmoving. The way those eyes pierced me made me feel so small and insignificant. Without even realizing it, I uttered a question. Why? I don't know why I asked, or what answer I expected, but the thing just stared at me before reaching out and taking my right hand. His hand was cold as ice. "I shall tell you my reasons by the end of our journey." And suddenly I could move. I felt as though a weight lifted off me, and I floated in the air. I turned and looked down at myself, a middle-aged man laying limp on a bed with his eyes closed. I turned back to the figure who was now leading me to a window. I looked at his feet to see the robe fell past his feet. He seemed to float across the ground. He slipped through the window and I followed. I didn't fight his grasp or try to resist. When we passed through, he turned to me. "First, we will visit the place of light." I suppose I expected him to lead me up or down. Instead, he pulled me to himself, and I fell into the darkness of his robe. For a moment, I felt nothing. I just floated in complete darkness. Then I was led out to a place I can only describe as heaven. It was wonderful. I was in a world made of light and clouds. I felt no pain. I felt young and strong and free. I looked around and I saw people from every walk of life, every age, race, and ethnicity, all walking together. I even saw my old neighbor, Miss Beth. She was always nice to everyone in the neighborhood. She even gave cookies to us kids. I saw people in pioneer clothing talking with friends, men dressed in Roman armor or Greek togas lazed in a field eating fruit from a tree. Vikings fought in a field and ate and drank at tables. Everyone here seemed to be smiling and happy. I stared in wonder and turned to the being that brought me. I asked him if this was heaven. He was silent for a moment before he looked out at the people around and spoke. "This is the place for those whose hearts are not weighed down by hatred, greed, or wickedness. To some, it is heaven. Others call it Valhalla, or Elysium. Then he looked up at me again. And now we shall go to the place of darkness. I felt a pang in my heart. I didn't want to leave here. I wanted to stay in this place of light and happiness. But I was as a leaf at the mercy of a hurricane as he pulled me into his cloak once more. I was in darkness once more before I was pulled into hell. There was no fire and brimstone. There were no demons with pitchforks. There was nothing. I was floating an empty black void. I reached down to feel for a wall, ground, anything, and my hands only grasped the emptiness. I looked around to find my guide. I flailed my hands desperately trying to find his robe. I called for help until my throat was raw, and there was no response. I dwelled in that darkness for countless eons, calling for help until my voice fell silent. It wasn't long until I tried ending it. I tried biting off my tongue, but my teeth turned to jelly. I tried clawing out my eyes, but my fingers became limp and soft. I tried chewing my wrist, clawing at my throat, even swallowing my own tongue or fist. Then my memories started to fade. First, colors. I don't know what went first. After that was food, games, TV, and then the memories I cared about. I forgot my mother's smile, my father's name. Did I have siblings? What were their names? What was my name? Was I even real? I floated in that darkness for so long. Time was meaningless here. I felt the fibers of my being slowly unraveling. At first, I welcomed it. If I had faded from existence, then maybe I would finally have relief from this emptiness. But then it became too much. The slow agony as my body was torn apart, bit by bit, became too much for my already fragmented mind. I slowly smiled as I felt the last bits of myself fade. And suddenly, I was in an ocean. My memories flooded back and I looked around. There was nothing but water on any side of me. I wept as the realization hit me. Of course, I wouldn't just fade. This was a place of torment. Whenever one world had done its job, I would be moved to another and reset, given all my memories and my sanity back, and forced to suffer all over again. As I wept and debated, trying to swim to the bottom of this damned place, a shadow passed over me. I looked up to see the one who brought me here. He looked back. This place is the place of torment, reserved for those whose hearts are as black as the deepest parts of space. Those who relish in tormenting others to feed their sadistic lust for pain. I barely heard him. I didn't care. I just wanted out. He offered his hand as I immediately accepted it and was once again in the darkness of his cloak. When I was released, I knew I was back in my physical body. I looked up at that being who had taken his place at the foot of my bed once more. I was still recovering from my experience in the world I could only call hell when he spoke again. I have shown you the world's afterlife, and now I make you an offer. I looked up at him. I had forgotten that he had offered me a cure for my affliction. In 1 month's time, you will die, and your soul shall be sent to one of those worlds. I paled, remembering the torment of that dark place, and I was about to ask where I would go when he said, I will not tell you which world you are destined to, but I shall offer you more time. I shall remove the curse from your body, and you shall live a full life. But in exchange, I will place this curse on the man closest to you, the only one you call friend. I paled. I knew he was talking about Josh. A young man full of life with an entire life ahead of him, Could I really force such an awful monster on someone like him? I looked at the entity that was shaped like a man, and after a moment, I made my decision. I'm writing this now in my room, late at night. My condition has worsened. It's been almost a month. My left arm has gone totally limp, and I can barely speak. But my right hand, the one the entity held as he guided me through the afterlife, was still almost fully functional. The doctors were amazed and had no explanation. Josh is doing well these days, still young and full of life. And I'm doing well too. I'm no longer so angry and bitter at fate for what happened. Sometimes I wonder what life would be like if I had taken the offer given to me. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. I had lived my life, and it was my time. Josh still had his entire life ahead of him. I'm still scared though, especially late at night. I'm pretty sure I was going to that world of light and happiness, but sometimes I remember how I felt before I met that entity who believed to be death. And I recall the darkness inside me, the hate and the anger I possess. And I worry that the damage has been done. But it was too late to worry about that. I can feel it now. It's late at night as I write this, and I can feel my heart slowing down. I know that as soon as I finish writing this, I'll pass on. And then I'll have my answers. Thank you for listening to this episode of Spooky Halls. If you have enjoyed this video, please make sure to check out our other videos and to subscribe. Thank you.